full of grace, gratia plena. This phrase, which is an approximation of what the angel would have said, has caused a lot of ink to flow over the centuries. Going back to the Semitic, you'd have to have something like this. Shalom, peace to you. Aleachi, Esheth, woman, Chen, of grace. The Greek, which is the original language of the Gospels, has it as chere, rejoice, kecharitomeni, which is the participle of charis, of the verb which is dependent on charis, charizo, the woman who has been graced. Latin can't do it, it has no verb to grace, so it gets rounded with full of grace. And then the fullness of grace has been meditated upon by all the monks and theologians of the centuries. There was a problem. She was on our side. She was in humanity's side and not the divinity, and therefore needed redemption. And therefore there was a great hesitation with regard to this question of what she had and had not received from Adam, because she had to be redeemed. And the Holy Ghost put it on the heart of theologians eventually to see that God, being outside time, could apply beforehand the merits of Calvary. And so, in her case, before Calvary took place, because of the merits of Calvary standing over time, the application of its merits were applied already at the moment of her conception in such a way that the link and the chain and the curse was broken, and it was not inherited in her case. She was sine labe, without any stain, conceived, and therefore it was the beginning of the end with regard to the dominion of Satan. He had no dominion over her, not 1 second of it. And it's logical, as is all our faith. The Lord, of course, will prepare the perfect receptacle. Therefore, there are consequences. This was proclaimed in 1854 by Pius IX, and it was left to Pius XII in 1950 to proclaim the already believed in consequence. There was no corruption of her flesh. She would not go into the corruption of the tomb, but she would be immediately glorified, because her flesh would not endure the consequences of sin. The second Eve, perfect. Now, look at this woman. She is more active in our time than ever in the past, which, by the way, is a hint that there's a reason for it. Where she is in glory, she can see things and she can foresee things. And if she's appearing more than ever, we can be sure that she wants to help us against ourselves. We are our own worst enemy on this planet. Now, you probably know that we're in the Marian age. Things already started in 1830 at Rue du Bac. And this little lady, this little damsel, only a postulant at the time, I believe, there in formation with the Daughters of Charity, in the heart of Paris, woken up by, it would seem, her own guardian angel, and taken through the corridors to the chapel, and the candles were lit on the way as though it were for midnight mass. And there she was able to place her hands on her lap. Imagine that scene. And that Immaculate Virgin already at that point hinted at the dogma with the title, the word, the inscription over the miraculous medal. Ô Marie, conçu son péché, conçu son péché, priez pour nous qui avons recours à vous, which we all practically have around us or somewhere on our person. conceived without sin. And these rays coming from her hands, it would seem that they are the graces that she obtains for us. It was in 1854 that Pius IX, driven by a divine inspiration, proclaimed it a part of our faith. And 4 years later, Lourdes, she came. When I was still a Protestant, I was about 14 at the time, I happened to see that film, The Song of Bernadette, and I was puzzled. Even though it's a bit hyped up by Hollywood, it's nevertheless historically true. And there was enough history and truth there to make me uncomfortable. If that's true, there's a problem with our thing. And it made me read. I couldn't dismiss the Catholic Church after that so easily. I closed that parenthesis. She came, and as is well portrayed in that film, when the good parish priest was initially dismissive, eventually asked for her name, she came back with this: Je suis Immaculate Conception. She was trying to remember it all the way back. She hadn't a clue what it meant or what it was supposed to be. She said, "What?" And at that point he realized that this girl was probably telling the truth, and then began to defend her. And the rest is history. By the way, she's one of the incorruptibles, isn't she? A very beautiful damsel. And she was not canonized for seeing visions, but for heroic sanctity under duress in the convent, perfect charity. And you know, Catherine Labouret, who had seen her at Rue du Bac, when she heard what was happening at Lourdes, blurted out, "Salome!" It's the same one. She saw the continuity. She was also around in other places at the time: La Salette, Bourin, and eventually Fatima. Spectacular in nature. At a spectacular moment of history, what was going on in 1917 in Russia is still not entirely over. And she had, of course, messages which regarded Russia and humanity. And it would seem, if one reads between the lines, that that sequence is not yet over. That when sin gets to a certain point, the balance becomes dangerous. And to re-establish it, if humanity doesn't take upon itself, with enough victim souls, what is due, then the whole lot of us would have to face some kind of re-establishment, usually through calamity and war. Watch this space. But we have also the promises. Her Immaculate Heart, that title is coming in now, would triumph. Now, immediately after that, something happened in Rome. The miraculous medal was going around, and there was a Jew who was hostile to the Catholic faith, who had a friend who was a believing Catholic, and who suggested to him the wearing of the miraculous medal that he knew nothing about. For some reason, out of friendship, he put it on, and it all started to happen in a chapel I know well in Rome, not far from the Piazza San Silvestro. There, this Jew was roaming around looking at the statues, and in this side chapel, which is unchanged, she appeared, the Immaculate, gave him infused knowledge of the faith, and I think he became a founder afterwards with his brother. But in 1918, at that very altar, a great Marian devotee, St. Maximilian Maria Kolbe, opted to celebrate his first Holy Mass. Why? The Immaculate, the Immaculata, had appeared there. After ordination, I looked for it and I was able to celebrate there. And it's unchanged. It's the side altar. One can go up these steps that were climbed by Maximilian Kolbe in 1918, to whom the Blessed Virgin had appeared and given 2 crowns with a choice. One was white, lilies, pure, spotless. The other was a rose, blood, red, pain, torture. And he was asked to choose. Could I have them both? Do you know that we didn't know what he was until Paul VI sorted it at the beatification? He came out in red vestments. He was also a martyr. In odium fidei, hatred of the faith, in that human inferno of Auschwitz. At the end of the sequence of visions at Fatima, she said that she would return one day, as she was then Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And that's how she presented herself at the beginning of the events of Garabandal. I want to pause there a second, because now there's something new coming in. St. Michael is very much involved with Garabandal, and he and the Blessed Virgin there give a strong message to mankind, and specifically to the Catholic Church, that the Blessed Sacrament was under attack. Less honour, respect and reverence was already being given at the beginning of the 60s. What would they say now? And when those girls were in ecstasy, things would happen. You know about these backward climbs or runs up rocky hills and all the rest of it, looking upwards. Well, they would sometimes get to the chapel and physically they were not able to turn their back on the tabernacle. They were made aware in ecstasy of what it was. And there is also that spectacular miracle in which an amateur photographer happened to have a cine camera with him when Conchita was in ecstasy, and the angel gave her Holy Communion, of course, on the tongue. It was, of course, an angel that gave it, and gave it on the tongue. It wasn't a Eucharistic monster. With regard to this, let us beware. It's because no one makes a noise. The priests and people are getting away from what St. Michael and Our Lady herself warned us about. Less respect for the bread of angels. No one dares to say a thing. Don't rock the boat. We have to have active participation. Oh, indeed. I make a jump. It's not yet over. Our Lady is around. There has been a curious sequence of events in Damascus. There has been the oozing of miraculous oil from icons there in the ambit of the Eastern Rite, but under Rome. And the invitation through a mystic there to heal the wound between East and West and obtain one date of Easter. This also is hurting heaven. Recently, our Holy Father, Leo XIV, has been in dialogue with its name is Bartholomew, isn't it? In Istanbul, which is the old Constantinople. He would be the first among equals in the Eastern Church. And he also desires that there should be one date for Easter. I make a jump. In our time, in the Ukraine, Our Lady, not long ago, it's in the 70s I believe, appeared over a disused Catholic church wanting the rosary to be said. But it was a Catholic church of Eastern Rite. And she had this message with regard to the Ukraine, that it was going to have a role in history with regard to Russia. Now these are places between East and West, as is Medjugorje. It's surrounded by Muslims, and close by are the Serbs and therefore the Eastern Orthodox. And we need to be aware that Our Lady is interested in the East, because there she is honoured too, with great reverence, and she does do things in their contexts in the way that they understand. Icons that weep, icons that do all kinds of things. There's one that even has sung, has been singing on Mount Athos, and so on. But in our day, Our Lady is telling us something. First of all, we must respect those who believe in her Son, for she did answer there with regard to other Christians in this vein, that her Son leads all his children as a king leads his armies. And that is how it is. We cannot judge, but we are in this together. And our brethren are our brethren, and our enemies are not other Christians. And we should be careful before judging, because other Christians can be far more faithful to the grace that they have than we are. I conclude. Far more faithful to the grace that they have. What is our problem? We too are hugely and fully graced with the sacramental system, the fullness of the faith, but we are abusing grace. And the abuse of grace is our main illness in the Catholic Church. Grace is badly used. Swearing, impurity, quarrelling, unforgiveness, bad use of the sacraments, badly said prayers, it's all abuse of grace. I remember reading the story of the Reformation when I was in France, in England, because our Carthusian martyrs were the first to suffer. And the conclusion of the book went in this direction with regard to what went wrong in Henry VIII. It was all because of the abuse of grace. And it went into his personal life, how he was receiving the sacraments while living in sin. Don't go there. Look at Our Lady. Correspond as the gentle Virgin of Sion. Avoid anything which you should not be doing under heaven's regard. Avoid impurity of the eyes, impurity with regard to your thoughts, your language. Be as pure as the Blessed Virgin, and correspond with all the plethora of graces that are coming to you from on high.